Bases dropped on another round of soccer down here. It's Thursday Thoughts. John here, you there. And here's your traffic for the morning. We've got a lot of stories from a bunch of different places. We've got stuff out of Montreal, which is going to be opening kickoff. We've got a lot of stuff out of New England. And they had the press conference yesterday with interim sporting director Kurt Onalfo and with Revs president Brian Bolello. We've got some sound from that. We'll play that this morning. And then, obviously, there's a lot of news around the planet that we can get into this morning. We'll get into all of that. And we got Niko Moreno joining us at 10:30 in his traditional slot for Thursdays with Niko, where we go over everything in Niko's mind when it comes to Major League Soccer. And we will roll from there. Tomorrow, 9 o'clock start. And it is because we're starting the show off with an interview from Scotland. Kit Lefersky, product of the University of South Georgia Gainesville campus, had 4 goals in their season opener. And we figured with a player in the SEC footprint playing for Celtic on the women's side, that Jarrett would catch up with Kit Lefersky. And so that'll be right out of the blocks at 9 o'clock. And then it will be our friends, hopefully, be on goals at 9:30. We can whip around, patent pending, trademark coming sooner, hopefully, rather than later at 10 o'clock. We're still chasing folks who have been covering the story in New England. And hopefully we can have some folks in the 10 o'clock hour discussing it there as they go into the best possible situation known to mankind, Colorado. They get to leave New England and all the questions and go to Commerce City, Colorado for the Rabid Prairie Dogs and try to get full points with all this madness going on around them. So that's the that is the traffic for today and tomorrow. Morning, Alex. Morning, Ricky. Morning, Kefsey. And Bam is on his 20-minute break and is hoping that we are all okay and are having a great day. Thank you, Bam, as always. Morning, Pars. Hope we have a great day, and today is Are You Okay Day. Remember, a conversation can change your life. Reach out to friends and check in with them. Very, very cool. I did not know that today was Are You Okay Day, but very, very cool. Ricky reminding us that it is now 6 straight for the Atlanta Braves, for those of you who follow along in the baseball. And Kefsey's in this morning. Pars is in this morning. Good to see all of you here as well. And if you have not seen the content from probably the best mascot in all of professional sports, I would highly recommend go and check what Blooper was doing while everybody else was in Philly last night. So Blooper was on a roll last night. Not that that's really a surprise, but Blooper was really Blooper was in rare form, otherwise known as normal, with the team clinching in Philly and him being back home at the Battery. So very, very cool stuff there. Social media team with the Atlanta Braves and with Blooper are just on point every single time, hitting home runs. So they've done some fantastic stuff. And Spencer Strider, I think, has the most strikeouts for anybody in 49 starts. And he's got 50. He's got one more to make it 50. Pars, we'll get into this since you dropped it in here early. Talk about the whole Aaron Rodgers NFL stadiums needing to have turf. Just wondering if it's true and if they really cited retractable grass. I don't know if they've cited retractable grass. I mean, they looked at what, you look at retractable grass and we see that in places like Arizona with the pie plate that goes in. They they bring the grass out on a pie plate, gets treated, aerated, rained on, rarely, sunshine, slide it back in, but they do have a cement surface that's there. Spurs Stadium has that retractable grass that we talk about, and literally they can bring it down below the surface, below the playing surface. They can treat it, they can keep an eye on it, and then they can slide it back up. That was one of the features of Spurs Stadium. I mean, not all stadiums have turf. And let's take a peek. NFL stadia and surfaces. Let's check this real quick. And by the way, I'm that guy that had Aaron Rodgers on his fantasy team. So yeah, I was in. I'm in trouble. I got Cooper Kupp and I've got Aaron Rodgers out of the blocks, both of them on IR. Cited the stadium that retracts it underground. Can't remember who just did it. Like I said, I know that Spurs Stadium does it. I can't remember who immediately does the retractables. But here's the list of in the NFL. Pittsburgh has bluegrass. Raiders have Bermuda indoors at Allegiant. Arrowhead has Bermuda. Dallas has turf. Carolina has field turf open air. Field turf in New Orleans. Bluegrass in Cleveland. Bluegrass at Mile High. Bermuda at Jacksonville. Bermuda at FedEx for the Commanders. Field turf in Detroit. Field turf in New England. Bermuda in Miami. A-Turf Titan 50, which I think is turf. That's in Buffalo. You've got to have turf in Buffalo. Kentucky Bluegrass reinforced with SIS in Green Bay at Lambeau. Bermuda and Rye Mixture in San Francisco. Deso Grassmaster, whatever that is. Playing surface is a bigger problem than family-friendly atmosphere. That's from NBC Sports Philly. The link has Deso Grassmaster. Indianapolis Shaw Sports Momentum Pro. Seattle's got field turf. Ravens have Bermuda. Field turf Revolution here in Atlanta. UBU Speed Series S5M Synthetic at MetLife. That's the first time I've heard of that one, but it's also in Cincinnati, so it's not the only one. Matrix Helix Turf Organic Infill in Nashville. Hellas Matrix in Houston. The UBU Series in Cincy. Bermuda in Tampa. Hellas Matrix at SoFi. Bermuda at Chicago. Bermuda at State Farm. And the synthetic in the UBU Speed Synthetic in Minneapolis. So 3 places have that synthetic where Aaron Rodgers was injured. But, yeah, the Bears have Chicago Department of Parks finest. Real Madrid. Okay. So Real Madrid has the retractable. Okay. So that's, retracting it underground. Okay. Roots. The Roots. The Roots play outdoors at the moment, and they're building their own modular stadium. I don't think they play on grass. I think they play on turf as well. I think they play on turf. So there's your rundown of what's up with turf down here this morning. So what was that? Why? Okay, so Costa Rican mascot races. Yes, it was during an international window, the public service that was performed by the Men in Blazers. They decided to show mascot races because the Costa Rican League was still going on. Last night, as a matter of fact, I was watching the Honduran League and another one. I watched Guatemala and Honduras last night on Fox Deportes. So, and they had to postpone the start of the late game because the lights weren't working. So it was interesting. So yeah, you can find it. All right, Bam. Once again, thanks again for Are You OK Day and all of that stuff. Contact, yeah, and Ricky, the injury. Oh yeah, Roots raising $1.4 million for their own facility. No, and that was I think for the first day that you could be a part of the ownership group. And so if they raise 1.4 as they're trying to build that modular stadium, good on them. Ricky, the Rodgers injury was spinning out of trouble. And when you see him try to plant his left foot, you literally can see the Achilles. You can see the muscle go. And so, literally he's trying to spin out of trouble, and his leg goes that little bit, and you see the muscle go at that point. Yeah, J.K. Dobbins was also a contact injury. Let's see, who do the Ravens have? Because I was trying to chase after some guys in fantasy because I have Gus Edwards. And Gus Edwards is going to end up getting more reps. And I had Justice Hill, I think, is the other one. So it was going to be those two. It was, I think it's Justice Hill and Gus Edwards that are tied to this whole thing. Yeah, Dobbins out. And, yeah, so I think it's, I think it is Gus Edwards and Justice Hill for your Baltimore Ravens this morning. But, yeah, Roots ownership getting 1.4 in that first day of the offering. Very, very cool for them because, like I said, they're trying to build that modular stadium and get out of CSU East Bay and have their own barn. So good on them for pulling 7 figures. Yes, the Ravens have grass. Or wait, do they have grass? Did we say that they had grass? Who is the yes, Bermuda. M&T Bank has Bermuda. So like I said, with Dobbins, he was trying to get out of a tackle, and Aaron Rodgers was trying to spin away from a sack. And so that has more to do with the act of evading or the act of footballing than it does the actual surface itself. So that's your football fantasy down here this morning and football turf down here. Okay, so opening kickoff brought to us by our friends at Kickoff Coffee. kickoffcoffeeco.com. There's your QR code once again for those watching on our social media platforms. It is not just on Twitch anymore. It is on Facebook and it is on Twitter, and I'm covering up the QR code that's important for the second hour of the show. In case you want to click that particular QR code that is on the screen right now, and I'm trying to get in the way of the other ones. So that's your QR code for our friends at Kickoff Coffee and kickoffcoffeeco.com for those of you who are watching. You click on that. Don't forget to use the code SoccerDownHere15. You get 15% off your purchase. They, in turn, take 10%, reinvest it into the youth initiatives that they have earmarked. Very, very cool stuff from our friends at Kickoff Coffee and kickoffcoffeeco.com. All right. So, story out of Montreal. Provided I don't know, eliminate the QR code so you can see my face. And a lot of folks will sit there and say, no, leave the QR code up. Yes, David, I think it is banned Bermuda rye or bluegrass only. I think that is your fix. All right. So I don't know if you guys saw this story out of Montreal, but from our friends at danslescoulisses.com, and it's the story of Matko Miljevic. 2 years ago, CF Montreal picked up Matko Miljevic. Transfer, several $100,000. A lot of folks were sitting there thinking, now that we're bringing in Miljevic, maybe we'll be scoring some goals. Miljevic hasn't even played 1,000 minutes in 2 years. 2 goals, 2 assists in 35 games. 1 assist in 8 games, and he's only played 124 minutes. So during Leagues Cup, Miljevic was on the bench during the group stage. Didn't set foot on the field at all. So he was basically bored. Man's not playing. He wanted to get reps. So he goes and plays in an amateur soccer league in Quebec province. Played 3 matches in the Ligue Québécoise de Soccer Calcetto. Leagues existed for almost 30 years. Matches are played with reduced numbers on turf. There's that word again. Smaller dimensions than a traditional pitch. And it operates in the northern suburbs of Montreal, specifically Laval. So basically, first off, you've got a guy who's not getting reps for CF Montreal. He's bored. He wants reps. So he goes to play in an amateur soccer league during the season. During Leagues Cup, you're bumped out of group stage. Nothing's going on. So, I'm going to go play in an amateur soccer league because I haven't been getting any reps with my club, which is playing in Major League Soccer, but we got some time on our hands. So he plays 3 matches in an amateur soccer league, though the contract, and he's getting paid more than $500,000 a year, keeps him from doing so. As a part of his deal, you're only supposed to play for CF Montreal. You're not supposed to do any amateur soccer league stuff or anything like that. CF Montreal or nothing. Miljevic was that bored that he wanted to play. And he goes and plays in an amateur soccer league in the northern suburbs of Montreal. 3 matches, 6 goals, 2 assists. 6 of the 8 points that he had scored in the same match when he was elected player of the match. So then in the other 2 matches, he only had 2 points. Out of the blocks, 6 of the 8 points he scores were in one match, 2 points in the other 2. League officials catch wind that this is, in fact, Matko Miljevic. That Matko Miljevic who's supposed to be playing down south and playing downtown at Stade Saputo on a regular basis. So they find out that it's him. They tell him, dude, if you want to play in this league anymore, you've got to do so as Matko Miljevic. And the team that he played for, by the way, finished 8th in a 9-team league. They didn't win with Miljevic in uniform. He had 6 of his 8 points in the 3 matches in one match. And they still finished 8th out of 9. So the opportunity was there to play that 4th match as Matko Miljevic. And he didn't. So his team doesn't make the playoffs. So we don't know if he played as under Matko Miljevic or not, or if he just didn't play. One of his good friends said, bruh, you look bored, come up here and play. So that Tuesday league was done. They didn't make the playoffs. This buddy of Miljevic's, according to Danley Coulisse, plays in a Monday league. The Monday team was in action earlier this week in the playoffs. So they're in the playoffs. He goes 5-0. The team is trailing that Miljevic is playing for. They're down 5-0. He allegedly spits on an opposing player. Player then apparently insults him in Spanish. Miljevic apparently hits the guy in the face. Refs stop the match. Miljevic is kicked out of the indoor soccer center. The other team wins by default. Quote from somebody who was close to the situation tells Danley Coulisse, quote, guys outside, league doesn't want to see him anymore, not just on the field, but in its facilities. He did not act like a professional, not even an amateur worthy of the name. The QCSL is a serious league that has never accepted such gestures. Matko was not his first story in the league. The victim's doing well. She should not have any after effects. So he hit a woman, allegedly, still seriously considering filing a criminal complaint for assault. And apparently CF Montreal was not aware of this. So MLS players obviously not allowed to play soccer in these leagues. So there you go. Matko Miljevic still under contract with CF Montreal for the 24 season. Club option for 25. CF Montreal is going to play their next match at Stade Saputo. Is Hernan Losada going to play him? So basically, dude signs for a boatload of money, isn't playing, gets bored. First team he plays for, plays under under an assumed name. Scores 6 points of his 8 in one match, doesn't score in the other 2. That team doesn't make the playoffs. Plays in a Monday league. And then apparently spits on a player and takes a swing at somebody. allegedly. So we'll keep an eye on Matko Miljevic to see what the latest is with him, because he really wanted to play, and he really wanted to play, period. And so he goes and plays in an amateur indoor league in Quebec, and apparently got into some fights. So we'll see how much longer Matko Miljevic stays with CF Montreal and Hernan Losada. Thanks to our friends at Dans les Coulisses for that story this morning. That's our opening kickoff, brought to us by our friends at Kickoff Coffee. KickoffCoffeeCO.com. There's your QR code, and I'm blocking out the one for hour number 2. So that's your QR code for Kickoff Coffee and KickoffCoffeeCO.com. Don't forget, use the code Soccer Down Here 15. You get 15% off your purchase. They, in turn, take 10%, reinvest it into youth games and youth initiatives. Very, very cool stuff from our friends at Kickoff Coffee and KickoffCoffeeCO.com. I know yesterday we were trying to think of like the proper soap opera name for what's going on in New England. We're still chasing folks. We'll see if we can try to have them on in the 10 o'clock hour tomorrow, getting ready for the weekend as they are. New England is getting ready to go play Colorado. That didn't fit well, did it? So yesterday, and this is why, one of the downsides of not having an afternoon show. Yeah, basically, Tom, yeah, what's wrong with him? So yesterday afternoon, the president of the New England Revolution, Brian Bolello, and interim sporting director Curt Onalfo had a press conference. And it was both way. It was a two-way street. It was by Zoom and in person. And they posted the first 25 minutes of it online after it was over. Various topics, and we have some of the sound from it that I wanted to play for you guys. And when I play the sound, it is going to be both the question from the reporter and the full response. It is not just going to be the response or anything like that. It is the full question from the reporter, then the response from either Bolello or Onalfo or both. So early on in the press conference, you get your opening statement. First question out of the blocks on Richie Williams' status with the club. Brian Bolello answered that question, once again, courtesy of our friends at the New England Revolution.
Great. Curt and Brian, for either one of you guys, this is a question regarding Richie Williams' status. Will Richie be part of the team's plans going forward? If so, what does he bring to the team? And if not, why not?
Sure. Richie Williams is a valuable member of our organization, and he remains with the organization. As everyone can imagine, this has been a really difficult time for Richie these last few days and weeks, and we've offered Richie some time off during this window. In terms of his role with the club, I don't have anything to share with that today, but we're continuing to have conversations with Richie about his future role with the club.
So, Brian Bolello says that they've offered Richie some time off during this window. After the press conference that happened 2 days ago, and with everything that has happened in the last 24 hours, not necessarily a surprise. Offered him some time off during this window. Bolello doesn't have anything to share about his role, continuing to have conversations with Richie about his future role at the club. So Richie Williams, after being the interim coach, is no longer the interim coach, pulled to the side, told just to kind of go stand over there, take some time, go over here and do your thing. So that's where we are with that. And it's like, okay, offered him some time off. So you won't be hearing from Richie Williams for the foreseeable future on anything unless he himself decides to go public. Continuing to have conversations with Richie about his future role at the club. Once again, he might be the one of the most expensive paid employees not to do much of anything for the recent future when it comes to the New England Revolution. Questions continued. Is Clint PA a long-term on Clint PA? And if he's a long-term answer, I thought that question was somewhat premature. How difficult the situation's been on the players, what kind of message they've delivered to the players, on what led the organization to make the change to Clint PA, long-term assurances about their own futures, which I thought was an interesting question. And that one, here's how they answered it. Bolello says, just to clarify, I never told Kurt he's the interim sporting director. So that was the question, and it was posed by Tom Bogert.
Guys, thanks for taking the time. I know it's kind of a difficult time here. I have two questions. One, specifically, what led the organization to make the change to Clint PA over the last few days after initially saying Richie was going to be the interim head coach for the rest of the season? And secondly, do you guys have any assurances over the long-term futures for yourselves at the club?
Yeah, so I just Tom, just to clarify something before I think you'll answer that. I've never told Kurt that he is the interim sporting director for the rest of the year, and Richie was never told he was the interim head coach to the rest of the year. So, both guys were at some point told that they were the interims. So I just wanted to clarify that. But with that, again, Kurt, if you want to.
Tom, can you go ahead and repeat that first part of the question?
Maybe unmute you. Sorry. Should be able to go.
Yeah, it was what changed in the announcement on Saturday night that said Richie Williams would continue as interim coach, and then on to last night that Clint PA took over.
Yeah, so I've been doing this a long time. I have a lot of experience in Major League Soccer. I have a lot of experience with group dynamics, especially team dynamics. And it became very clear to me the best path to move forward for our group to be successful was to make changes and have a fresh start. And that's what we did.
To have a fresh start, and that's what we did. And I found it interesting that Brian Bolello, who says, I never told Kurt he's the interim sporting director for the rest of the year. Richie Williams never told he was the interim head coach for the rest of the year. The team posted in a quick blurb on Saturday that was the case. Literally in like a 2-sentence deal. That's what was said. But okay. And then Kurt Analfo says it became clear best path forward for our group to be successful, to make changes, have a fresh start. That's what we did. Yet we still are now going to be waiting after Richie has been given some time off, continuing to have conversations with Richie about his future role of the club. Then there was a question about the lack of transparency surrounding the investigation into Bruce Arena. Brian Bolello, I'm going to take that to assume you're talking about the investigation and that piece of this, and this was from a reporter at the Boston Globe. Empathized with the reporter, empathized with the fans. A league-conducted investigation. I have faith in the league, faith in their processes, and I understand their needs for confidentiality in matters of terms of protecting subjects, witnesses, reporters, all those people involved in these investigations. So in terms of their investigation, I had to refer people to the league. Richie Williams referred people to the league 3 times in his last press conference as interim head coach of the New England Revolution, and that included a question about how he feels emotionally about the situation. I'm going to have to refer you to the investigation. And so Bolello basically says it was a league thing, and you really can't say anything. And I get that. I get that completely. Why the club replaced Clint PA, parted ways with Dave Vandenberg and Showery Joseph. Again, sometimes when you're in these positions, Kurt Analfo, you need to be very clear about what you want to do. Sometimes you need to make changes. With all the experience that I have doing this, it was clear to me, as the interim sporting director, it was clear to me that we had to make changes that would allow us to be the most successful version of ourselves, and that's what I did. So Kurt Analfo, as interim sporting director, decides that it's the end of the line for Dave Vandenberg and Showery Joseph. I don't know about any other kind of chain of command or anything like that. But you listen to Kurt Analfo, and that's what I did. I don't know how, like I said, I don't know how much more input he got in this process. But Kurt Onalfo basically says, and that's what I did. Clear to me we had to make changes, and that included jettisoning 2 Bruce Arena assistants and giving Richie Williams some time off, Brian Bolello doing that as president of the organization. So president of the organization gives the interim head coach time off during this time. Then Kurt Onalfo, the interim sporting director, decides to make changes in jettisoning the 2 assistants, Dave Vandenberg, Showery Joseph, elevating Clint PA, and elevating the number 1 assistant from New England Revolution 2. And that's what I did. That's what I did. Current relationship between management and players. They get into that on training. Where ownership stands. Apparently ownership is in the loop on all of this stuff. On if Richie Williams was set to be let go after the season. Bolello wasn't going to address speculation and rumors. On why the team parted ways with Showery Joseph and Dave Vandenberg, Kurt Onalfo said, we mutually parted ways with both of those assistants that you spoke about. That's it. That's all he said. Not a why, but that's what we did. Tara Sullivan of the Boston Globe followed up. It seems to be glossing over the past few weeks. In terms of positions of our club, where we've been, I don't think all that gets lost because of what's happened in the last few weeks. So I think if you look at the core of our club, I think there's still a lot of strength here. Then they got into the whole thing about what the future of the club looks like, how the players are prepared to move forward. Matt Polster, by the way, told multiple sources that he told Dan Roach of WBZ and our friends at Blazing Musket that Matt Polster released a statement, said after a long day of meetings, players, coaches, front office staff mutually agreed not to train. So Matt Polster releases that statement, which is in line with administration and not in line with some published reports. So Matt Polster comes out and says that as a part of all of this yesterday. On why the news announcements came at odd times. Because remember, the Bruce Arena announcement was the news dumpiest of news dumps ever. As the game with the Loons is ending in a 1-1 draw, you release the Bruce Arena statement. They said they had to be in a little bit of a reactionary mode on a number of things, and you never want to be in that. They had to be a little reactionary, so Bolello understands the confusion or why people don't think it was the right time to put these things out there. You don't want to be in the situation. They admit that they were a little reactionary. Club's message to the team on the situation, on how they think it will affect the club's ability to attract players. Bolello on why he said it was a difficult time for Richie Williams. A lot written about Richie. When you're being talked about publicly, it's a difficult situation for people who are in this building. They're in this sport because they love the sport, love being around the guys, love coaching, love the fans, love doing just what their job is. When they have to answer questions or be in the media or being talked about, I think it's always stressful. I think that's really what I'm talking about when I say it's been a difficult time for Richie. And then last question of the presser, Kurt Onalfo was asked if he was looking forward to telling his side of the story. Telling his side of the story.
I appreciate it. Appreciate the time, guys. Brian, just to start with you, you said about 20 minutes ago, quote, as everyone can imagine, this is a difficult time for Richie. What do you mean when you say this is a difficult time for Richie? And to Kurt, do you feel when this all passes, you would like to tell your side of the story here?
I mean, in terms of Richie, there's just been a lot written about Richie. And so, when you're being talked about publicly, that's always a difficult situation, for people who are in this building, they're in this sport because they love the sport. They love being around the guys. They love coaching. They love the fans. They love doing just what their job is. And when they have to answer questions or be in the media or being talked about for other reasons, I think that's just always stressful and difficult for anyone. And so, I think that's really what I'm talking about when I say it's been a difficult time for Richie.
And to answer your question, I was asked, first of all, I didn't ask to be in this position. I was put in this position. And I embrace it. The Crafts and Brian have asked me to lead this organization through a very, very difficult time. And I have enormous experience. I'm extremely confident. I love the people in this building. I love the owners. I love our staff. And my side of the story is to make a very difficult situation into a great one. And we have that opportunity. So that's what we're thriving on, is can we through all this noise and the stuff that none of us asked for this, but to drive forward and to make something out of it. And that's the message that we're telling our players. And they are an incredible group of human beings. And I just tell you, watch out, because they are united, as we are as a staff and an organization, and from ownership all the way through. And it's time to get out there and play and stop talking about all the baloney. It is noise, right? We're going to focus on winning.
And despite all of this, and OG brings this up, they're second in despite of all this dysfunction. True. And now Curt Onalfo has another chance to try and add a positive to his career. Curt Onalfo has been with Bruce Arena forever. Now that Bruce Arena is no longer there, and Brian Bolello and Curt Onalfo have decided to just kind of have Richie off to the side for a little while. Parting ways with Dave Vandenberg and Showery Joseph, Curt Onalfo, and that's what I did. And that's what I did as interim sporting director. This front office, no, brother. I give the players of the New England Revolution a boatload of credit. Not knowing a thing, apparently, having a long meeting with Brian Bolello and Curt Onalfo, not knowing why Bruce Arena was being investigated, what anything was coming out of said investigation, they had no idea. They still continue to train. They still continue to go out on the field. They still continue to be second in the East currently. How will all of this affect them going forward? I don't know. But they get a lot of credit. You want to talk about noise? And then you have what happened yesterday where Curt Onalfo says, and that's what I did. I did it. I sent Bruce Arena's 2 assistants packing. So you have no continuity on the first team level, although Clint P.A. does have familiarity with, and his assistant do have some familiarity with the folks that have been seen on the first team level, guys like Bayraktarovich, who we've gotten to see so far this season with Atlanta United 2 when the Revs have played. This will be interesting. This will be an interesting case study. But Curt Onalfo was the one who jettisoned the 2 assistants that were attached to Bruce Arena. Bruce Arena goes. Showery Joseph says on his Twitter, first and foremost, that it was almost like a see ya bye to Bruce Arena before Bruce posts his resignation. Then Showery Joseph and Dave Vandenberg are gone. Richie and Curt Onalfo, who were interims, according to press releases, but not interims, according to Brian Bolello. They continue their work, and now Richie is getting some time off during this window about his role with the club. Mm-hmm. But now we have to get away from all the baloney. We have to stop talking about all the baloney. I hate to break it to Kurt Analfo, but this is far from baloney. When you have this kind of disorder and apparently a lack of transparency even with your players about why their head coach is away, published reports in The Athletic said he's just going away for a while. He's going away for a while. Yeah, like Ricky said, that's that is going away for a while. That's like, 30 years ago, Dad going to the grocery store. That's like the sick dog going to the farm. Going away for a while. Still nothing from any kind of investigation. We still don't know. We still do not know what's going on where Bruce Arena is concerned. We just have a resignation. We don't know investigation. We don't know any kind of what he did. And so now you have Bruce Arena gone. You have his assistants relieved of duty by the interim sporting director, who is the number 2 under Bruce Arena. So the interim sporting director decides to jettison the 2 assistant coaches that were attached to the head coach who's no longer there. And then your assistant, who was your lead assistant to the head coach who's no longer there, you've decided to give him some time off now. Now, I want to make sure that I'm not missing anything here. So, Twitch Pitch, if I am missing anything here in this process, let me know. 5-week investigation, coach on administrative leave. News dump, he's resigning. Number 1 assistant promoted to interim. Number 2 in the sporting chain promoted to interim, although he wasn't. They neither were promoted to interim, apparently. Then, after all of the firestorm, number 1 assistant, who's the interim head coach, is given time off during this particular difficult time. And the interim sporting director dismisses the other 2 assistant coaches. That's what I did. And has brought up the second team head coach and the second team number 1 assistant to be the interim to the interim. They're the new substitute teachers for the remainder of the season, apparently. Let me know if I've missed anything. But that is what we're looking at right now. And a press conference where we're supposed to stop talking about all the baloney. Stop talking about all the baloney, it's noise. We're going to focus on winning. Well, you're in Colorado. You got a great chance to do that this morning. You got a great chance this afternoon to do that this weekend. Right now, you check the juice boxes on this. I don't anticipate it being something completely and totally out of the ordinary. In Major League Soccer, surprising no one really, the Revs. The Revs are a dog. The Revs are a dog on the road at Colorado. Things have flipped. Colorado is a plus 135, and the Revs are a plus 177. Your draw's a plus 269. The Rapids are a home favorite because we've been talking about baloney for the better part of a week. Oh, gee, maybe New England just needs to flush out the entire Bruce Arena tree. Yes, the bologna that they cooked. Morning four card. Four card says everyone but the owner should be fired. It's a mess. Zero transparency. And to a degree, I understand it because of an investigation within the league. I get it. But something other than the apparent away for a while. Just something other than that. Maybe a little detail. You may not have to sit there and say, well, A, B, C, D, E, and here's why, but just an idea. If there is an investigation, there's only so much you can do legally. You don't want to get yourself in trouble. Say something, but don't say, everything. Four card, yeah, zero transparency, no plan, and it's the definition of a baloney show. Give you that. It's the definition of a baloney show if it's not the definition of an ish show. Hutch. New England needs to start a massive blitz of pseudo-empathetic, warm and fuzzy corporate buzz phrases to stop the PR hemorrhaging. Yeah. They got to do something. Tom says, man, if that team manages to have any type of success at all going down the stretch into the playoffs, it'll be a miracle. Yep. Four card, after hearing the juice boxes, said place all the juice boxes on New England. And players will take it out on Colorado. OG. Kurt Analfo appears to be a prime example of the Peter principle. Failed as a coach, now promoted to a sporting director. And remember, every place that Kurt Analfo has been, he has been fired. And he and Bruce Arena go back a long way. If he and Bruce Arena go back a long way, Kurt Analfo's still there? Played from 91 to 99. Here's his managerial career. 2000 to 02, he was an assistant at DC United. He was the interim in 01. Didn't make it to 02. He was an assistant for the U23s for the U.S. 03 to 07, he was an assistant for the United States team. 07 to 09, he was with the Wizards. 10, DC United, an assistant for the LA Galaxy 11 to 14, head coach of Los Dos from 14 to 16. Then he was the manager in 17. That's what the places were. Hired as an assistant to Thomas Rongen, later replaced by Ray Hudson at DC. Left to become an assistant to Bruce Arena during the 02-06 stretch during the national team. Included among the final three candidates for the Rapids in 05, eventually being passed over for Fernando Clavijo. 06 appointed head coach of the Wizards, replacing interim head coach Brian Bliss. Pledged to install an attacking style. Failed to make the playoffs. Wizards technical director Peter Verman cited Analfo's skill as a communicator, leadership, scouting, and talent evaluation in announcing the hire. He went 5-6-7, lost 6-0 on the road to FC Dallas. Analfo got fired. Finished with 27, 29, and 22. Hired as the head coach at DC. Started 3-12-3, fired. 2011, assistant coach of the Galaxy. Reuniting with Bruce Arena. Notice a common thread here. Played at DC. Coach with the national team. Once again, also head coach of Los Dos. Following the departure of Arena to coach the U.S. men's national team, promoted to first-team head coach in 2017. He went 6-10-4 and got fired. 6-10-4, fired. 3-12-3, fired. Finished one season, started a second in Kansas City, fired. He's been kind of drafting off of Bruce Arena a lot. And then when he steps out and tries to go onto a separate lane, gets out from behind the Bruce Arena lead car, tries to get into the clean air, fired. OG's having flashbacks to the Andrew Gutman hostage video. Hutch failing upwards, yeah. So that is what New England has in their interim sporting director in Curt Onalfo, someone who has drafted off of Bruce Arena, but the 3 times he tried to pass him in a separate lane and take the lead. Yes, 4-card sees a pattern. And now that Curt Onalfo, once again, is pulled out from behind the Bruce Arena draft, we'll see what happens. But, yeah, fired, and a triple. June 2nd, 2019, he was named technical director. Well, he was technical director of the New England Revolution. Bruce came in, and then the title, 5th season is technical director. So there you go. That's the as the Revs revolve, I guess is probably the best way to phrase it right now. As the Revs continue to revolve, evolve, devolve, that's where we are at the Revs. So, yep, Curt Onalfo. That's what I did. And we're supposed to stop talking about all the baloney. I actually grew up liking bologna. Give me a nice bologna and cheese sandwich, maybe with some mustard, some wheat bread. Bologna and cheese. That was a solid lunch for me in high school. But I hate to break it to Curt Onalfo, but we're not going to finish talking about all the baloney. Not happening. That's not how it goes. So that is that's how the Revs continue to revolve. That's your update. And we're going to try to have somebody on tomorrow in the 10 o'clock hour to discuss it from the New England perspective, but we'll go from there. Plenty of stuff to talk about here in the next half hour. Niko Moreno joining us at 10:30 for the Pacific perspective of everything and get his thoughts on what's going on in New England and everything else in Major League Soccer. Very, very big, very, very busy weekend. A lot of very cool matchups. So we'll talk about with Niko coming up in about a half an hour. Since we're getting close to the top of the hour, I'll go ahead and pull the trigger right here and make sure that I get the levels correct so I'm not blowing you or me out, considering all it is background music, and hit the button and read a promo. Rotor-free, clean, fresh air, one place you need to go. It's the Lemon Ice Service QR code. This one is over my left shoulder. For those of you who are watching on Twitch, who are watching on Facebook, and who are watching on the Twitters. Lemon Ice Service deodorizes enclosed spaces like houses, apartments, and condos. They've created a customized solution that lemonizes all organic odors, including those like pet, cigarettes, and food. Realtors and property managers use the Lemon Ice Service to eliminate bad odors to help them sell or rent their homes that much faster. It's a turnkey process. Like I said, I have no idea what that means. Sounds good from a real estate perspective because this is a very positively written promo. It's a turnkey process, makes it easy to work with realtors and property managers. Kind of the environment we like that. Offering a green way to get rid of odors without any kind of toxic residue whatsoever. Different than Febreze or our other masking agents that we have either under the sink or above us in the cupboard, because when we reach under the sink or above us in the cupboard, you take that masking agent and you spray it in the air. There's a reason they call it a masking agent, because that masking agent is just masking odors. It's not attacking problems like our friends at the Lemon Ice Service do with their proven scientific formula. Pricing very, very easy, either by the cubic foot or parts per million, to come up with a price that's affordable for you. Offering results in 24 hours or less. If you have any questions, frequently asked or otherwise, one place you need to go, it's the website. And this is where I grab my pen. Website's lemonize.com, but your homework assignment is to, after the .com, go /Atlanta, so they know what part of the world that you are addressing them from. So full homework assignment, ELIMINIZE.com /Atlanta, lemonize.com /Atlanta. Lemon Ice Service, proud sponsors of everything SDH. I think Mike actually used a Lemon Ice Service at one point. And we'll speak highly of them if I'm not mistaken. I hope I'm not mistaken. But I thought that Mike Conti was very, very high on our friends at the Lemon Ice Service. So that's it for hour number 1. 10 o'clock hour now. Like I said, we got a half hour to roll through everything that is going on around the world. And I wanted to start with our friend Harry Maguire. And, you know, we talked a lot about Harry Maguire, and especially this week, especially after the own goal in the match against Scotland, where he caught all kinds of hell all over again. And in looking at the picture, his mom, Zoe, wow, do they look alike? Man. From our friends at The Telegraph, Harry Maguire's mother has condemned the disgraceful and totally unacceptable abuse her son has received. Harry Maguire insisted this week he could handle the abuse and even went as far as to suggest his teammates can benefit from him being targeted. But Gareth Southgate branded Maguire's treatment as a joke, and now the player's own mom has hit out at the way her son is being vilified. Writing on Instagram, Zoe Maguire, quote, "As a mom, seeing the level of negative and abusive comments which my son is receiving from some fans, pundits, and the media is disgraceful and totally unacceptable to any walk of life, never mind someone who works his socks off for club and country. I was there in the stand as usual. It's not acceptable what's been created over nothing. I understand that in the football world there are ups and downs, positives and negatives, but what Harry receives has gone far beyond football. For me, seeing him go through what he's going through is not okay. I would hate to have to see any other parents or players to go through this in the future, especially the young boys and girls breaking through the ranks today. Harry has a massive heart, and it's a good job he's mentally strong and can handle it as others may not be able to. I wish this sort of abuse on nobody," end quote. Maguire's been a target, social media. Talk about social media in a bit. A really cool experiment that was done in England with two pundits. We'll get into that in a bit. Eric Ten Hag took the decision to strip Maguire of the captaincy. Maguire turned down the move to go to West Ham on a $30 million fee being agreed. He remains the costliest defender in football history. The £80 million move from Leicester, size of the fee, have contributed to all of the scrutiny and all of the criticisms. Maguire says, "I would not say that I am a person who struggles with pressure mentally. I've been through a lot in the last couple of years, and I've been Manchester United captain for nearly 4. It pretty much takes the pressure away from my teammates and puts it all on myself. It makes them play better for sure. When you hear the national anthem and the way they disrespected that, I knew it would be hostile. And then the second half, I got most of it. I'm happy to go with that. Don't worry about that." Jamie Carragher said that Southgate should take him out of the England reckoning for his own well-being. For his own protection, Jamie Carragher writes, "Harry Maguire should not play for England until his career is back on track. Personally and professionally, the current situation is unsustainable. There must be a frank and honest conversation with those closest to him about how to resolve a mess because this drama around him needs fixing. I was watching the England versus Scotland match with my son James. It was painful to watch. If that was you, I would want you out of the firing line. This has gone too far," I told him as Maguire endured a nightmare second half. David says, "Can we get her quotes after Euro 2020 and the missed penalties and following racism?" That might be a homework assignment, David. But yeah, so Harry Maguire's mom is stepping into the fray, and we'll see where that goes. John Joe Shelby's heading to Turkey after a spell at Nottingham Forest. He's going to join Rizespor after having a disagreement with Steve Cooper on loan for the season, naming their 25-man squad. Yesterday, they were working on other French players, including signing Emmanuel Dennis for $16 million. He hasn't been involved. Shelby has not been involved in the squad since April after a disagreement before Forest's match at Liverpool. Offers from Burnley, Sheffield United, and Leeds. Midfielder opting for a fresh start in Rizespor, 5th in the table. So, and apparently Matt Turner is also not going to be the starting keeper this weekend for Forest. It's going to be the new guy. Eddie Howe's been given unequivocal backing by the Saudi ownership ahead of a very, very busy week. And Alex, this is from Luke Edwards over at The Telegraph. Retains the full backing of the club's Saudi chair, Yasser Al-Rumayyan, whose only response to the team's difficult start to the season has been to ask what additional help he can provide. In a repeat of the comments he made during the lowest point of Howe's time on Tyneside, the aftermath of the FA Cup defeat by Cambridge United, Al Rumayyan has once again offered his full support to the manager and the board he entrusts to run the club on a day-to-day basis. Rumayyan has taken counsel from other board members, determination to protect Howe from unwanted and unnecessary pressure in Eddie Howe's second full season at Newcastle. They've lost 3 out of 4, went to the international break after the loss at Brighton. They lost only 5 times last year. Crucially, the people running the club are well aware of the fact that there was always likely to be a drop-off this season, with Chief Exec Darren Eales, Director of Football Dan Ashworth, co-owner Amanda Stavely, all stressing at board meetings over the summer this will be a far more difficult one than the last. Newcastle's recruitment was designed with the long-term future of the club in mind rather than just the season's results. In signing Livramento, who is 20, Lewis Hall, who is 19, and Sandro Tonali, who is 23, once again, quoting the article, the hierarchy deliberately focused on signing players who would improve under Howe over a prolonged period of time. The view has always been there could be short-term pain for long-term gain. Nobody felt the need to contact Howe directly to reassure him since the defeat to Brighton, but it is hoped the 45-year-old understands he has the complete backing of the board who want him to remain as manager long-term. Home match against Brentford Saturday. Champions League group match against AC Milan, and a trip to newly promoted Sheffield United next week. How's that for whiplash? Brentford, AC Milan, Sheffield United. That's whiplash for you. Welcome to international football. Richarlison is going to seek psychological help after a difficult international window with Brazil upon his return to Spurs, as he wants to rediscover his form. Struggled for consistency ever since his £60 million move in July of 22. Has scored only 1 Premier League goal for the club in 31 appearances. He was in tears on the bench during the 5-1 win over Bolivia last week, substituting after failing to find the net. Now revealed that off-field issues were behind his emotional outburst, saying people who are close to me, in quotation marks, had created issues away from football. Quote, on the field, I'm a happy team player. I try to help as much as possible, he told Globo Esporte after the victory over Peru. Sometimes things don't go the way we want. I think this part is a bit of the off-field side that ended up getting in my way. Even though you want to do things right, it ends up going wrong. I will continue to focus on the club. The storm has passed. So Richarlison says he plans to work on his mind when he returns to North London. He says that his bad phase will soon come to an end. He's going to seek psychological help from a psychologist to work on his mind. Come back stronger. It's about getting a good streak at Tottenham. Going to sit down and talk to them. I need a good streak to get to the rhythm of the game. So good for Richarlison. Understanding that he needs to find help, and he's going to find help. Very, very cool to hear that. Stuff from our friends at the Guardian this morning. I was going to, I meant to tell you, I was going to tell you about this particular thing. That very, very cool thing that Heineken did. And it was with 2 pundits. And one of them was Jill Scott. The other was Gary Neville. So this is from Luke McLaughlin at The Guardian. So Scott and Neville, get this, for a 5-day period, without telling anybody, they swapped social media accounts. So basically, Gary Neville became Jill Scott became Gary Neville on social media, on the 280-character app. And it is a Heineken campaign called the Social Swap to highlight the issue of gender bias on the 280-character app. In April, they swapped accounts for 5 days, sharing opinions on football as they normally would. So basically, they were just themselves. They were just on the other person's 280-character account. No one knew this for 5 days. So basically, if you were yelling at Gary Neville, you were yelling at Jill Scott. If you were yelling at Jill Scott, you were yelling at Gary Neville. And so on social media, you have the short version of it, where they're reading mean 280-character thoughts. Basically, Neville says, I've seen some of the replies that have come into Jill, which were his tweets. Get back in the kitchen. Stick to the game you know, love. Neville says, that type of condescending, ignorant tweet. There's no doubt that in football, women who have an opinion on men's football basically get told to go back in their box. The issue of equality for women's sport has been close to Neville's heart. When I go back to my life with my family, my mom got banned from playing football for the boys team in the 70s. Made the local newspaper because the FA banned her from playing football. He's got daughters who are 13 and 14. And his daughters watch Salford and Manchester United every single week with him. He says, my youngest probably knows more about Salford and United players than I do. The idea they can't have an opinion on football without having their gender referred to is ridiculous. Neville points out messages on social media may be the tip of the iceberg in terms of overall attitudes. Quote, I think the worry is the silent majority that don't tweet. If that attitude is embedded within society, we definitely do need to make sure we continue to keep challenging and talking about it, because the reality is it does need to be an attitude that's lost forever. I think we've got an opportunity with young people to change those sort of generational attitudes. And then Scott and Neville traded stories. But yeah, it was a really interesting thing. The social swap. For 5 days, Jill Scott and Gary Neville swapped out social media accounts on the 280-character app. And so Jill Scott as Gary Neville, that's some of the most level-headed things I've seen from you. Gary Neville as Jill Scott, go back to the kitchen and, prepare lunch. So the social swap, something very, very cool from our friends at Heineken. Very, very cool. I don't know. Maybe we should try some of that stuff sometimes. Maybe we should. Some lower division stuff. Regulations now in the lower divisions in England. They're now changed. Regulations still have toughened to stop them from falling into the wrong hands. We probably should have Jessica Charman back on to talk about this. Analysis from Ben Fisher over at The Guardian. Clearance, not approval, is apparently now the way that it's supposed to go. You've been cleared, but you haven't been approved. Speaking of Jess's Redding, if you go on her account, Jess Talks Footy on the 280-character app, this was something that had been discussed. And it was a thought that her beloved Reading might get another points deduction, and they did. Once again, from our friend Ben Fisher at The Guardian. Second points deduction this season. 16 points in less than 2 years. A suspended 3-point penalty was triggered after Reading failed to comply with an order to deposit funds by the deadline on Tuesday. EFL took a dim view and Reading was hit by the 1-point deduction and a suspended penalty by an independent disciplinary panel back in August after the late payment of wages on 3 occasions last year. It meant that Reading dropped into the League One relegation zone. They've now been docked 4 points this year. On Wednesday, the EFL released a statement outlining their frustrations. Reading said the owner, Dai Yong, is continuing to seek external investment with the aim of mitigating the risk of cash flow complications arising in the future. And this is where the hashtag sell before we die, DAI, came from. He's the owner. The fans hate him. They're now in the League One relegation zone. 3rd division relegation zone after this points deduction. They came out of a 2-year transfer embargo this summer, docked 6 points November and 21 for exceeding the EFL's permitted loss limit. It's like a P&L. It's like a profit and loss ratio. Further 6 points in April for breaching terms of an agreed business plan. They've been docked 10 points this year. 10 points this year. If there was ever something, if there was ever a mechanism where folks could kind of sit there and go, the league or the EFL or somebody needs to take over, this would be one of those situations. This absolutely would be one of those situations. And you want to sit there and you go, really? This is still going on? You have all of these fantastic stories, but you end up with Reading once again, after another points deduction, now in the relegation zone. Right now, with the 4-point deduction, they are now at 2 points and a goal difference of -1. They are in the relegation zone because of goal difference. 6 matches in, 4-point deduction, in the relegation zone. And there are basically right now 5 clubs, 4 spots. If it was to happen today, then Jess's Reading would go to League 2, the 4th level of English football, because of financial mismanagement. Wigan is the same way. They had an 8-point deduction because of a breach of EFL regs, and they're the other team at 2 points right now that is running afoul of the EFL. Wigan, an 8-point deduction, has them at 2. Reading, a 4-point deduction, has them at 2. Burton Albion's at 2 points on goal difference. Fleetwood Town, Cheltenham Town at 1 point each. They have not won. Burton Albion, Fleetwood Town, Cheltenham Town have not won a match this year. Reading's 2-4. Wigan's 3-1-2. But point deductions have them either close to the relegation zone or in it. And I think 5 teams, 4 spots. I think it's going to be the way it's going to be this year. It's going to be that battle. One of those teams is going to, the ones that are currently in the zone, plus Wigan, those are the 5 you need to consider to go down to the 4th division of English football. Top-ranked team right now is at 14 points. And that's the thing, is that in these leagues, you've got to come out firing, and it is a shootout. It is a shootout all the way through. And by the way, I watched the season premiere of Season 2 of Welcome to Wrexham last night. We all know what the end result's going to be. Right now, they're in 7th. A point out of the immediate promotion, avoiding a playoff. But once again, it's a fight. Paul Mullen finally back from rehab after the injury that happened in preseason friendly against Manchester United. But I mean, seriously, literally, it is 3 points separating 5 through 16. That's the kind of street fight you're going to be in this year. I think Wrexham can get out of it. I think Wrexham can go to League One. I think they can play well enough to be promoted. I think in League One, obviously, it gets tougher. I think the championship might be their limit just because of finances. I mean, Ryan Reynolds is not going to invest his entire superhero movie fortune, and Rob McElhenney is not going to do another 19 seasons of So It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia to try and get this thing to continue to grow. But I'm going back to watch Season 1 of Welcome to Wrexham in addition to watching Season 2 simultaneously, so it's been fun to watch. So you basically watch Season 2 of Welcome to Wrexham and then get caught back up. The Season 1s are basically on the model of a half-hour show. So it's like 22, 24 minutes. You can watch 3 episodes in an hour. Literally, you could probably binge the entire series in a day if you wanted to. Which might not be a bad idea, actually. Might do that. Yes, David, Hunger Strike is by Ms. McGuire is the only real option. So yeah, that's your fun going on in the lower divisions right now, which really isn't fun. Internationally, we talked about the head of the Malian Federation, who was recently congratulated for having a new birthday by Gianni Infantino, Mamadou Touré. Remember him? He's in prison. He's awaiting trial. Forgery, use of forgery, complicity, attacking public property. Re-elected last week in an extraordinary General Assembly. Remember all that stuff? It gets better. And I say that tongue firmly planted in cheek. Ed Aarons and Romain Molina. 3 players who were banned for organizing a protest against their treatment while on international duty with Mali's women's team say they have not been paid since 2018. That's 5 years. Have not been paid for 5 years. And that the Malian Football Federation, or FEMAFOOT, doesn't care about women's football in the country. Mali's captain, Fatoumata Karantau, Kuluba Segore, and Aissata Traore, suspended by FEMAFOOT after organizing the protest following their victory against Burkina Faso in the first leg of the 2024 Olympics qualifier back in July, which took place in Benin. They returned to Mali and had expected to go straight into a new training camp before the second leg, but instead told to go back to their homes without being given any traveling expenses aside from the 1,000 West African francs that was provided by a FEMAFOOT employee who took pity on them. If you go to xe.com and do a conversion, 1,000 West African francs is amount to £1.31. You showed up and not given any money whatsoever. I'm trying to see. Maybe that's it. We'll see what that is. Into U.S. dollars. Let me see if this is the correct conversion. Yeah, $1.62, $1.63. $1.63 because an employee of the National Organizing Committee took pity on them both. Didn't have a ride home. Gave him $1.62. No traveling expenses. Karantau, Segore, and Traore said they were later informed they would not be playing in the second leg of the qualifier by Famaga Dembele, the president of the women's football at FEMAFOOT. Talking with the president, he told me to publish on my social media that everything is all right because he was seeing my posts, Karantau told The Guardian. I said, I can't until we receive our money. When we were in Benin, when we really started the fight, he informed me I would be fired from the team as soon as we went back to Mali, end quote. Traore said, it's a shame. I couldn't believe it. We received a call from the coach to inform us about our suspension. We didn't receive any official letter, nothing. Mali drew the return leg 2-2 to face Zambia next month in the next round of Olympic qualifying. It is understood the 3 banned players were told this week their suspensions had been lifted via a text message from a team official, which ordered them to report for training the next morning. The experienced former Al-Shir defender Segore has also claimed most of the squad have not been paid since finishing fourth at the AFCON in 2018. Quote, I don't even really know how much money they owe us. Absolutely don't care about women's football. We're just asking for our rights, nothing more. Traore is a forward who plays at Guignon. Says we're fighting for our rights. We're just asking for the money they owed us. FIFA gives money to FEMAFOOT every year for the development of women's football. I'm asking where this money is. We're hoping for a change one day, but how? Look at what happened. We protested, and now we're suspended. FEMAFOOT did not respond to questions from The Guardian. Color me shocked. And we mentioned that FEMAFOOT's president, Mamadou Touré, we talked about him last week or earlier this week getting the happy birthday or the congratulations. It was the congratulations for winning the Extraordinary General Assembly from Gianni Infantino. While dude is in prison awaiting trial. So there's that. Niko Moreno in 5 minutes. All the stuff that we do. I think, Tom, that it is. I think the West African franc is a common currency because I tried to, when I was doing my quick conversion, tried to come up with a West African franc or something like that, and it ended up being something that is the Central African franc. The West African franc is the Central African franc, and so it all apparently ends up being the same thing. But yeah, 1,000 West African francs, $1.62 to get home. $1.62 to get home. All the stuff that we've done, try to advance the game, and you end up with silliness like this. And silliness is the word I'm going to use for the moment. Gossip, rumor, and innuendo, and what to watch on TV. Chelsea keen on Ivan Toney. What a surprise. Remember, that price tag starts at $80, I think. Not allowed to play until January 17th, but can return to training this weekend. Juve lining up Arsenal's Ghanaian midfielder Thomas Partey as a replacement for Paul Pogba, whose contract could be terminated if he's found to have breached anti-doping rules. Maguire was very close to joining West Ham, according to Hammers coach Kevin Nolan. John Murtaugh, football director at Manchester United, chief exec Richard Arnold, trying to resolve tensions between Eric Ten Hag and Jadon Sancho. That's from the four-letter paper. Take the information at your own peril. Sheikh Jassim and Sir Jim Ratcliffe will be patient in their attempts to buy Manchester United after reports the Glazer family would wait until 2025 to sell the club. Prospective takeover of Everton by 777 could be a lengthy process as the Premier League makes sure no rules will be broken. That's from the Times. We mentioned John Joe Shelby, and we mentioned Jurgen Klopp yesterday. Clubs in Turkey and Qatar being sounded out as the Manchester United look to offload Donny van de Beek. Looks likely to stay at Manchester United until January. Manchester United midfielder Hannibal Mabry is wanted on loan by Besiktas. Eden Hazard considering retirement at the age of 32 after being released by Real Madrid. And Graham Potter has turned down the manager's job at Rangers and Lyon. Three-letter paper, take the information at your own peril. What to watch on TV today, and there's plenty. ESPNU has women's soccer at 9. SEC has Georgia and Alabama women's soccer at 7. ACC Extra College women's soccer at 7. B1G Plus women's soccer at 7. ESPN Plus very, very busy. Forward Madison Richmond Kickers at 8 in USL League One. College men starting at 7. They have 5 matches. College women, safe to say they got a lot. I'm not counting them. There's a lot of women's soccer on the Plus today, starting with Asheville, Moorhead, Longwood, VMI, GW, and UMass at 4, and ending tonight with 5 matches at 10 o'clock, Loyola Marymount, Grand Canyon, Fresno State Pacific, Cal State Bakersfield, UC San Diego, UC Irvine, Zot, Long Beach State, Cal Poly, and UC Santa Barbara at 10 o'clock. Flow FC, they have 8 women's soccer matches starting at 6:31, not a moment later. Stony Brook in Delaware. Paramount Plus has the Argentine Primera and the Brasileiro tonight. Platense Lanús Independiente Huracan, your doubleheader in the Primera, Brazilian Brasileiro. 4 matches from our friends at Paramount Plus. Fortaleza Corinthians, Santos Cruzeiro at 6. Coritiba Bahia at 7. Red Bull Bragantino and Gremio's at 8:30. And if for any reason you wanted to catch things on I don't know, BN or For the Fans or CDO, Gold TV, Teise, watch the Brasileiro. One place you can go, our friends at Fanatis, fntz.co/soccer down here. And yes, CONMEBOL qualifying is an extra pay-per-view, sadly. And it's another load of money for another streaming service. So, but there are other ways to watch. Universo and Telemundo have Brazil and Argentina, so we can watch those. But yeah, if you were looking for Fanatis to help you out with CONMEBOL, it is a cost up on top of a cost. But fntz.co/soccer down here helps out the network, helps out the show, helps out our friends at Fanatis, and it gets you a lot of cool stuff. AFCON, I was watching AFCON the other day. I always watch Teise because of things like Sportia and things like that. So Jason got me hooked. I blame him. That's the line I always use. And it is It is the case. Let it be said, so let it be done. Fanatis, fntz.co/soccer down here. Yeah, you're not kidding, Tom. Eden Hazard fell off a cliff with that career, no doubt. Let's check his stats. Let's go to our friends at Transfermarkt real quick and check out Eden Hazard's statistics. There's a buffet not having been missed a joke in there somewhere. Eden Hazard, who is at Without Club FC, has a market value of €5 million. Stats, all seasons. Here we go. Eden Hazard played in 10 matches last season. 22-23. Yes, last season. 10 matches in 5 comps last season. 1 goal, 2 assists. Last year, he played in 198 and 194, 392 minutes in 10 competitions across all comps. La Liga, Champions League, Copa del Rey. 10 comps for Real Madrid last year, 392 minutes. Year before that, 21-22, 23 comps, 893 minutes for Real Madrid. 1 goal, 2 assists. At least his scoring is consistent. 2021 season for Real Madrid. 4 separate comps, 21 matches. 4 goals, 1 assist. 807, 829, 896. So 896 minutes in 2021 in 21 matches. 22 matches for Real Madrid in 1920. Played over 1,000 minutes. Played 1,545 minutes. Has not played more than 1,000 minutes in a season since the 1920 year. And then you go back to his time, 18-19, and then back from that with Chelsea. But yeah, has not played over 2,000 or over 1,000 minutes in a season since the 1920 year. And now Eden Hazard is he's the starting left winger at Without Club FC. And that's a question, Tom. Does somebody in MLS maybe give him a shot? It'd have to be a big ticket team, I think. Legitimately, it would have to be a big ticket team because I don't think Hazard would want to go to Colorado or RSL. Even though going to RSL, you'd play with Chicho Arango, it wouldn't be too bad. But the persona that is attached to markets, I mean, Eden Hazard in Cincinnati. I mean, I'm just naming names. I'm not naming like Philosophy and Eden Hazard and buffet tables, those kinds of things. It would have to be a market that Hazard would sit there and go, nah, fam, I want to get paid because of my past. So it would have to be a big market team. And that's the thing. And 4 cards right. He could sign with LAG by tomorrow. And so we will pose this question to this particular gentleman as he gets all settled in and gassed up, ready to go. Niko Moreno, it is time for Thursdays with Niko. I salute you, my friend. How are you?
What's going on, John? Everyone, all your audience, excited to be here. It's been a long and busy week between World Cup qualifiers, MLS in general. Even if there was a break, there were some games played. So getting ready for this week and the last third, the race to the finish in MLS. So excited to be here with some interesting stories to talk about as well.
Yeah, we'll get into that. We had a question to the floor. And, Thursday Thoughts, they kind of do this sometimes. Eden Hazard is debating retirement at the age of 32. And the question to the floor from our friend, the Airborne DJ, does somebody in Major League Soccer give Eden Hazard a shot? And our friend Fourcard makes the point, if he's a free agent, which he is the starting left winger without Club FC, he can sign for LAG tomorrow. Does Eden Hazard make any sense to you in any way, in any club in Major League Soccer?
Yeah. Anytime that you have a guy with his profile, his trajectory, career, talent, you could say that there is a lot of teams in MLS that could use his talents. Now, that's just going off of what we know, going off of what we remember from the player. I think that regardless of who you are and what your name is important to evaluate where you are physically, medically, mentally. Are you bought in? Are you committed? Are you going to come over here and really work and be an asset, or are you not, right? But going off of just the paper and going off just what we know of the player, sure, a team like LAG, that there ain't enough hands to go around and help get water off that boat sinking, then yeah, sure, and they've had some new players that have come and helped, and even though to me he seems a little too late, it would definitely make sense. I think it makes sense for a ton of teams, even a team like San Jose that could use some help up top, so yeah, all in all, I get it. I understand it when players want to retire, and I always think that it's better when you retire up top, at the top of your game, where everybody remembers how great you were, and not when you begin to be like Lampard or Drogba when he was out here, and Andrea Pirlo, all those guys that maybe wish they could have some of those seasons back.
All right. We spent a lot of time this morning, and frankly, we've spent a lot of time over the last couple of days about what in the wide world of sports is going on in New England. From your perspective, and everybody there at Soccer Bar and Pulso Sports, what have been your thoughts / takeaways of the news dumpiest of news dumps, literally as New England is getting 2 points pulled away from them, as Dane St. Clair gives an assist to Fragapane to take a 1-0 win and turn it into a 1-1 draw. When that is happening, you get that news dump that Bruce Arena is resigned. Then you have all of this stuff with Richie Williams. Then the assistants are gone. Kurt Onalfo says, that's what I did. Richie Williams is now being given time away. What have the discussions been like there on the West Coast this week about what's going on in New England?
The timing is odd, and the fact that it was Richie that brought it up, a guy that's been with Bruce Arenas his whole career, that has been around his behavior, attitude. The conversation we've had here with media members is it's hard to teach an old dog new tricks, right? So guys like Bruce, guys like Siggy, Brian Smetzer, they act exactly the same around their people, around their circle. They have ways about them. So the interesting about this is that it just came to light, right? And that initially we thought it was going to be Richie that was going to be interim head coach. Sounds like the players, per the Athletic and other reports, didn't want to play for Richie. So everybody just wants clarity. Everybody wants transparency on what happened. We knew that Bruce was under investigation for some insensitive language or something to that nature. I had heard from people that it could be some homophobic comments. There could be all kinds of things. So we don't know exactly what happened, but the lack of transparency is the odd part and how everything's kind of playing out. You have a soccer team that's at the top of the East that has a good roster. So I think they're going to be the ones most affected. That now you don't have that leader. You always have players that die with coaches and they'll bleed for coaches. So who are going to be those players that are going to feel like they are being shafted because now your coach is gone? And how do you respond to that? So there's a lot of components. I heard from somebody that there was rumors about a non-disclosure agreement as well that apparently Bruce was having people sign. So there's just a lot going on. It seems like a movie that just keeps getting things added onto it. But at the end of the day, Bruce is someone that, like any guy with his career and age, sometimes might say things that no one has ever said. Hey, Bruce, you don't say that. And now it comes to light. Now it's an issue. He decides to part ways. He says it's good for the team and it's good for him. He's going to reflect on how everything transpired, and he's going to grow from it. So we'll see. But all in all, it's been a very odd and long-winded divorce between Bruce and the Revolution.
No doubt. And despite all of this, they're second in the East with all of this noise going on around them. They are second in the Eastern Conference with all this. And they get to go to Colorado. They get to escape all the madness that's going on. I mean, you've got Boston television stations putting the Revs in their rundown before the New England Patriots. That's what is going on with this right now. And the best thing that could have happened is that you leave town and you're going up against the Wooden Spoon Contenders and the Rabid Prairie Dogs, and you get to escape this for a weekend in a game where you're an underdog right now, according to the juice boxes.
Yeah, I mean, they say there's no such thing as bad publicity, right? And unfortunately, we live in a society that loves drama, and the bigger the drama and the speculation and everything, it kind of puts your story at the top of any headline because of everything that's going on. But on the soccer side, we see a team with the Hill brothers that are playing excellent together. Vrioni starting to score some goals. That midfield starting to make some sense. They do drop points. Minnesota, credit to them by the way they end up finishing that game. Last resort, St. Clair's in there. Finally, somebody puts it in the back of the net. And it's being Fragapane, which ironically enough has his own issues with Mr. Adrian Heath. So he comes out of the doghouse and gets the equalizer for Minnesota. So all in all, Minnesota, New England Revolution deserves the credit and the headlines for other things. However, this story is trumping all everywhere. Even that other story that I'm sure we'll talk about a little later.
Yeah. You want to go ahead and talk about it now?
It's your show, baby. It's a weird one. It's a weird one. So, I do hope before we finish, I wish Bruce the best. Me and him had, as media members, I feel like Bruce got a little nicer over the years. I think when he was in LA, he was more abrasive, a little more smart remark, but he's a great coach. He's the face of U.S. soccer in so many ways, right? If there's a Mount Rushmore of U.S. soccer, he's definitely up there. So you got to appreciate what he's done for the game, and now he gets to move on, and I wish him the best.
Yep. So before we get into other stories and red light, yellow light, green light, and all the other stuff that we do this week, Rich Ransom, who watches, listens, and is a part of our discussions from Philly, he's a Philadelphia Union guy, and he asks, Seattle has the most local players. How do they do it?
I think that the premier programs and the youth academy for the Sounders, they have a really close relationship. So if you play for Park Northwest, if you play for Washington Premier, you just have a very close community when it comes to soccer. And Sounders Academy, does a very good job at inviting all these players and making a very good pipeline for anyone who desires it and has the talent for it, to have that opportunity. I think that Seattle as a fan base, and as a stadium that, it's a very family oriented experience, allows for kids to grow up loving the game, loving the Sounders, and it really feeds this kids' dreams into not playing for any other team, but the Sounders to start off. So, yesterday talking to Stuart Hawkins, 17-year-old center back who gets signed by the Sounders, you could see it in his voice. There's pictures of him in the stadium when he was 8, 9 years old. He told us that he started in an even smaller club than the ones I just mentioned in Harbor. And so it's interesting the way that kids just kind of play along and they all want to be together. Jackson Reagan had a similar story. Paul Rothrock, a similar story as well. It just seems to be, to me, that every player that begins their journey within the Seattle community has an end goal, and that end goal is to get to soccer academy for the Seattle Sounders and then fight their way through the Tacoma Defiance and then eventually into the first team for the Sounders. And you see it all over. Now, Seattle also has a very good philosophy of creating a sustainable resource of players coming in, homegrown players coming in, helping their team. And they show it to you, right? They show it with Ovid Vargas. They show it with Danny Leyva. They get playtime. Some of the careers go one way or another. Because I did ask yesterday, Brian Smetzer, if signing a kid this early at 17 years old, knowing that he's going to get no playtime, is that a double-edged sword? Because he creates expectations for minutes. It could make a player frustrated, like we're going to talk about here soon, of not getting enough playtime, because you do see it. I've seen it with really talented players here in Seattle that they become frustrated with not playing. But I think it's just a philosophy of the Seattle Sounders wanting to create local talent and having the Sounders be that platform.
And there are teams here in Major League Soccer that go about things different ways. You either, you want to sit there and drop $9 gazillion and turn it into Messi and friends. You have that option if you can navigate the cap. But once again, we've maintained in our conversations, and we've maintained on this network, you've got to boost the cap. You cannot have the $7.5 million cap number, which is slated for 2027, be your cap number next year. It's got to be more like the National Hockey League, where you've got a floor and you've got a ceiling, and that ceiling is $80 million. I mean, you've got to advance this along if you're going to continue to want to be that attractive location, especially as the world is coming here in 2026. Philadelphia does it one way. Seattle does it one way. You have Dallas does it, through the academy as well, but Dallas is learning to reinvest now as well. Seattle's spending money, but they're not, being ridiculous about it. They'll pick their spots. And so there are different ways of going about it. You have those grandes that want to drop the wallet and just sit there and go, throw the money up in the air like Cartman and bathe in it, But there are different ways to go about it, and Seattle has found their way.
Yeah, and it's balance. And I praise the organization for doing it, because the salary cap does obligate you to find ways for you to have good players, productive players at a smaller salary, and homegrown players are an excellent way to do that. But you got to have the right scouting team. You got to have the right pipeline, and you got to want to play these kids in various positions. And even when they don't come out of the academy, the scouting team does a great job at looking around, right? Christian Roldam out of UW, Alex Rodan out of Seattle U, Dylan Tevis out of UW. So they do a good job at looking at the area, looking at old soccer. They're not just focused and tunnel visioned into getting the next European player or getting the next Argentine prospect. They just do it differently. And they do add those pieces like the Loderos, like the Raul Ruidíaz's, the Albert Rusnacks, and they try to kind of work with that and just make it a cohesive team. And I think that's something that they do excellent. But yes, there are the success stories with LAFC, with the Galaxy. They do it a lot different, right? Let's go. Let's get the biggest start. Let's get the Javier Hernandezes, the Velas, the Garrett Bales, whatever we want to do. And we're going to try to win a ship. And that's just the way they do it. I think it's more sustainable. And I think it shows more organization when you do it the way Seattle does it.
All right, so in hour number one, we talked about an opening kickoff. We talked about a player for CF Montreal who was frustrated at the lack of playing time. So a buddy asked him to play in a pickup league. He played 3 games in a pickup league, got 6 points in one match of his 8. The 8 points in 3 matches, 6 of them in one match, and then only had 2 in the other 2. His buddy's team didn't make the playoffs. Then he goes and plays into another of his buddy's teams, leagues. And this team was in the playoffs and got so mad that he apparently, allegedly, according to French media, spit on an opponent and took a swing at somebody. That was Matko Miljevic. He's a frustrated dude apparently right now. Who's the frustrated dude that you had that you wanted to talk about? What was your weird?
It was him. I mean, I've seen frustrated players here in the past, not to that extent, but Han Walawana was a player that was here that was a young prospect. I think he came from UW as well. 20 minutes, kind of forced his way out of the club, ended up in Nashville. He gets in a trade in for Jimmy Medranda and a couple of other players. And then he goes over there and his career never goes nowhere because of that urgency, that frustration, that desire to go and try to be something somewhere else. Aaron Cover had a similar story. I feel like Danny Leyva has found moments and times where he's frustrated with not getting enough play time. Now he's in Colorado in loan, growing. Now these are players like someone like Danny. He's intelligent, he's bright, he knows how to do it, but that doesn't mean that he's not a human being and can't be frustrated. Now this is ridiculous. I mean, I've seen players get in trouble for playing pickup games, maybe an exhibition game, maybe there's a celebrity game, and they're like, hey, man, we got a game coming up. And I'm like, hey, I don't care. And they get into trouble for things. I see people get in trouble for maybe doing something completely different, man. Maybe riding bikes or ATVs and getting hurt while doing those things, snowboarding. But I've never heard of nobody just getting into a league with a fake name and trying to, I don't know, who are you lying to? I mean, who? And this is a prominent player. I mean, this is the youth Argentine and U.S. Youth national team type of talent, right? He, I believe he played in Argentinos Juniors. I had his youth with Boca Juniors. So he's a talented player that now is, I don't know if they're going to ban him completely or is it suspended. But at the end of the day, he's going to have some repercussions for trying to do what? Like, I don't get it, man.
World qualifying. We had stuff in the Euros. CONMEBOL was its standard amount of crazy. I was trying to explain to folks Argentina playing in Bolivia and playing at La Paz. And the running phrase that we have here is La Paz is not at sea level. And when you play at the stadium in La Paz, it's basically like going to Denver and then stacking Denver on top of Denver and then stacking probably the Space Needle on top of 2 Denvers. And that's your elevation that you're playing at when you're playing in La Paz. Is that close?
Absolutely. That is correct. And I've talked to players who have had the opportunity to play in Bolivia, and man, they just playing without oxygen, and they have literally oxygen tanks as you would in the NFL, which is a whole different type of necessity. But here is because soccer players were used to going 90 minutes, they're completely out of breath. Man, I remember Radamel Falcao one time coming out of a 1-0 win against Colombia. He could barely get through the interview with the person that was talking to him because he couldn't catch his breath. So every time he would respond, they would put the oxygen mask on him, and then he'd go to the next question because that's how difficult it is to play in Bolivia. So that's one of the, I think the beautiful things about CONMEBOL is that you can go play in Barranquilla, which is playing in an oven at 12 o'clock, with the sun beaming above you. And I like the fact that you can have your home field advantage and bring people and teams to play with your fans, but also everything that surrounds you and gives you an edge to just balance the field sometimes of teams like Brazil, like Argentina. Sometimes if it doesn't work, like we just Argentina still trample Bolivia. But at the same time, I think those things are pretty cool. Very particular of what happens in CONMEBOL.
El Tri, I was at the El Tri Uzbekistan match a couple days ago. And El Tri's got problems, man. I mean, I was looking at the Mexican national team, and this was the Uzbek B side. This was that song that you really like from that group that you didn't think that they ever recorded, and it ends up on the backside of a 45, and you go, wow. Uzbek's B team on a gorgeous free kick at 90+2 ties Mexico 3-3. What is going on?
Like, I'm going to go ahead and tie this, and I'll do my best to maybe move on from one to another. And it goes like this, right? We have expectations for our national teams, depending on who you are, where you're from, and there are realities on the other end. So I'm going to try to tie in CONMEBOL and what you just said about Mexico, right? Okay. Colombia is a team that, for me, is being way too complacent with mediocrity. They are a team with a rich history. They're one of the biggest producers of talent in South America, sending players all over the world. And yet here we are, beating Venezuela 1-0 with very poor soccer. There's no spark, no magic. You play a aged out, begging for a generational change Chile with Gary Medel looking like I did during the media game, right? Stomach out, all that. He's there. Arturo Vidal comes off, I believe, like in a ambulance, because I mean, the guys were exhausted. This is a bad, poor version of Chile, and yet Colombia was unable to win that game. They almost lose it. So Colombians are starting to ask more of their national team with the talent that is there. Colombia, maybe they don't have as many big names as they used to before, but Luis Diaz is still a top player, right? He plays in Europe, plays in a top European team. He's talented. There's a whole bunch of youth players. In Mexico, moving on to that, now they have their own history. They have their own expectations, but the reality is that there isn't a lot of talent right now. You don't see that generational change, and I think it's starting to catch up to them. The fact that their youth system and the pipeline isn't really there, and now they're tying against a B squad of a team that they were supposed to just demolish. If you really look at Mexican media before this game, they call it un partido molero. You know, whenever you get a team that you're just going to smack around, Appalachian State type, right? You're just going to beat them down, right? That you just get that team that you're just going to beat them down, give you confidence, and you draw 3-3. This is ridiculous. I thought that there were several players like Sepulveda that should never be called back. There's a lack of a system. Raul Jimenez, yes, he scores, but he's not the Raul of old. So I just think that Mexico is in a rut, and they have to claw their way out of it, because it's no longer, you don't have the excuse of it's about the coach. It's about the Argentine coach like Tata, or the Colombian coach like Osorio. Now you got your guy. This is the guy that you wanted, and still there's issues, and still you can't get results. So I just think that Mexico's in some deep, deep problems.
Yeah. I thought you were going to use a different word other than problems that was going to that might earn us our explicit rating for the day, which would have been fine. I mean, that's perfectly good.
No, I tried not to. Not in your show.
Well, I mean, hey, Jarrett is definitely the one that likes to do the explicit rating. Before we get into red light, yellow light, green light, and the finish, I got to hit a button.
Uh-oh.
News out of Sporting Kansas City. Alan Pulido has signed a new DP contract through 2026. So
wow.
Alan Pulido staying at Sporting Kansas City for the foreseeable future. Press conference today at 3:30 Eastern time, so 12:30 your time Alan Polito and Peter Vermes are going to have a press conference. Polito staying through at least 2026, or at least the asset will be under control through 2026. Anything else internationally on your mind before we get into Major League Soccer?
No, just to finish off on CONMEBOL, it's interesting. Like I say, if I had to break it down, Colombia, they earn points, but with very little soccer. Chile needs new players. I mean, you cannot continue to have this. You're going to get nowhere in South America with this team. They need some really, really bad new players. Ecuador looked pretty good, looked decent. Peru, they lose in the last minute against Brazil. People are wrongfully blaming Raul Ruiz for not covering the near post on a play where Luis Abram, the Atlanta United player, was in charge of Marquinhos. He gets beat, and he's nowhere to be seen in the goal. So that's been interesting. If you guys get a chance to go into Pulso Sports and look at Brian Smetzer's response to me asking him, because the Peruvian coach, it was funny enough that he said that Raul was put in that near post because he defends that with his club. I've never seen Raul defend the near post. So I asked Brian Smetzer directly, and he's like, man, we've never done that. So that's caught a lot of traction in Peruvian media. So very interesting. And check it out. It's a funny story. But Peru still, I thought that they played well into the point of that they lost, but they were balanced. They were organized. They gave Brazil some issues. So as always, love CONMEBOL. Uruguay, they lose against Ecuador. Facundo Torres gets laid out by the goalkeeper. Don't know how that's not a PK. I'm talking about the guy just tackled Facundo Torres. But that's just CONMEBOL. Gets played differently when it comes to physicality.
True. So let's see. So let's play. So red light would be Mexico.
Oh yeah.
Who's your yellow light internationally after this window?
Yellow light. Let's give it to Colombia. Very mid, very vanilla, very uninspiring, to be quite honest. But there's pieces. Carrascal was interesting. Sinisterra. So let's give them the yellow because they were able to get some points. Green, as always, Argentina. They take care of business. They do what they're supposed to do. Play in Bolivia, which is not easy to do. They still win 3-0. They own it. So yeah.
All right. So let's get into the action this weekend in Major League Soccer. Hudson River, Atlanta United hosting 71,000 of their closest friends as Lionel Messi and his friends come to town. Orlando City, Columbus, Philly and Cincy. Looking at the mirror, it's like the Spider-Man meme where they're looking at each other and pointing. You got FC Dallas and Seattle. Houston in all caps is a very, very sneaky one at 8:30. The Revs escaping all of the madness, going to take on the Rabid Prairie Dogs. El Tráfico, San Jose RSL, Austin and the Timbers. What's on your mind with this weekend? A lot of heavy-duty stuff.
A lot of heavy-duty, a lot of great games, right? But we got to start with Atlanta, Miami. I'm still not sure if Messi is going to play this game. He obviously didn't play for the Argentine national team. He did have, obviously, that scare where he gets pulled off while playing for Argentina in that first game. They called it precautionary. He just felt something, a little tightness. I don't know if he'll play against Atlanta, but you still get El Tata coming to your stadium. Is going to be interesting. Atlanta United needs the points. Miami needs the points. Miami has proven that they can win and be hard to beat with those co-estelar players, right? Those rotating pieces. You still get Sergio Busquets. You still get Alba. It'll be interesting to see Joseph Martinez wanting to, I'm sure, score in Atlanta. So that's a big one for me. The Houston St. Louis, like you said, I think that's a sneaky one. Houston is in our green light category these days. They look so good. I voted for Hector Herrera as the best player of last month. I thought he deserved it. And St. Louis, right? They're just doing it right. They get Klaus back. They won't have Sam for this one. But, Nico will probably play right next to Klaus if that's what they need. So it's going to be a good one. That one I'll be watching for sure. Can Houston maintain that sort of play and can they not just lay off the throttle and keep intense, keep having Cole Carrasquilla at this type of level. So it'll be interesting to see. Philadelphia, Cincinnati, always interesting, always important. Two top teams. Obviously, the Shield, the Rays are pointing at each other 100%. And Dallas, Seattle is another one that could be interesting, right? Seattle, Raul Ruiz is arriving today to Seattle. He's going to train with the team, and then we'll fly back to Dallas. We asked Brian, why didn't he just meet you guys in Dallas if he's coming from Peru? He just said that's the way the air plane tickets were kind of placed beforehand. So it'll be interesting how that plays out. Seattle is still not out of the grid. I mean, they're second in the West because of what LAFC hasn't done, because of what other teams haven't done. But that doesn't mean that they kind of, I don't know if they deserve to be at second place, to be honest, but they've been able to hold on. So this game against Dallas is going to be very important when it comes to that Western Conference last push for the playoffs.
All right. Hit the promo for me. What's going on with the Soccer Bar and Pulso Sports?
All right. Like I mentioned, it's really, really interesting to hear Craig Weibel talk about this new young player in Stuart Hawkins, center back, 17-year-old, the first and only homegrown center back that has been added to the team in its history. Very interesting. We also talked to the young player. He talks about he just got his license. His dad barely trusts him with the car. And here he is, signed up to a first-team contract. So I love those stories. I think those are fun to hear a kid talk about that experience. And in Soccer Bar is going to be at 1 p.m. Pacific. We'll talk about all of this. I'm sure we'll get into all the same stories that you heard here, but in Spanish, with John Rojas, with Diego Cora. We're going to have a special guest as well, so it's going to be a good one.
All right. El Rolo and W on the Twitters, Thursdays with Niko. As always, it's fantastic to have Niko come in to give the Pacific perspective on stuff. And so, Niko, since you are here and we are at the end of yet another program, you, sir, get to send us home.
All righty, everybody have a good day. Make sure that you guys follow my man here, SDH, the best in the business. Really appreciate it, guys. Have fun. Watch these MLS games. It'll be a good one.
9 o'clock tomorrow morning, Kit Lefersky will be joining us from Scotland to talk about stuff going on with the Celtic women's side, Beyond Goals Mentoring Weekend Whip Around, and Niko's going to enjoy his coffee. Be safe. We'll be back at it again in 22 hours or a little less. Bye.